Mutation. The idea that any organism can be altered in any way due to changes in the environment. Well, hello there. I'm Professor Esteban, and this is my home, the Esteban Institute of Mutation. We here at EIM specialize in the study of mutation, its effects on the planet, and the prevention of hazardous man-made forms that bring harm to the environment. My students and I have been asked to give a demonstration on all the different forms that mutation comes in, as well as discuss how to avoid those that can be dangerous. Each member here is an example of mutation in several different ways. As such, we will discuss specific cases and in the end offer a broad overview on what it is that we stand for. Among the items discussed will be mutation through environmental selection, migration, adaptation, pollution, and genetic engineering. Now you may be wondering why I'm indulging so many fish sticks. Well, the answer is fairly simple. I myself am an example of mutation through environmental selection. Now let's go back to my family heritage back in ancient times. Delicious! Back in the days of the cavemen, there was a small tribe that lived in an area that slowly became dominated by one specific food source: fish. As you can see, the high amount of food offered by the local fish became so dominant that other possible food sources continued to shrink. Eventually, they all but died out in the area, offering my ancestors the limited food source of the fish. This specific tribe ended up staying in this area for thousands of years. Though they advanced with the times, their dependency on their food source did not. During the era of the Vikings, these specific peoples continued to survive on fish as the major source of food. So much so that by this time, no other food sources existed in the area. The continued use of only fish as a food source had a major environmental-based mutation on these specific people. As you can see here, by more modern times, these specific people not only feed on fish, but entirely survive on it. The natural selection of food elimination in this area has pushed these people into only being able to digest fish. Any attempt to eat other foods do not offer the necessary nutritions needed to survive. Other examples can be seen all around the world. Panda bears, for example, have gone through a similar mutation. Pandas, like many people, have over thousands of years been dominantly fed upon only one food source, in this case, bamboo sticks. Due to this, other food that they have survived on in the past, including a large diet of fruit, have died out in their natural habitat. As such, they are now only able to digest the bamboo stick. Now that you have seen some examples of natural selection mutation, we move on to another form. We will now learn of mutation through migration, as told by one of my first students, Daniel Boyko, but he is commonly referred to by a different name. This is Danny Boyko, otherwise known as Vulcan. Abilities gained through mutation via migrating. They include heat resistance and pyrokinetics.
Shortcut! Yeah!
Not today, you want! You picked the wrong alley to go down, little boy. Oh, you look nice today, huh? So where's your freaking money? I want all of it. I want everything.
Look!
Your skateboard's going too.
It's Vulcan!
You're not distracting me like, what? Vulcan! No! No!
Leave that little boy alone.
Not today, Vulcan. This victim's mine. Ah! No! Vulcan! Ah, you cheater!
Thanks, Vulcan!
My abnormal abilities are all thanks to the generations before me. Records from my ancestors indicate that they migrated to a southern volcanic region hundreds of thousands of years ago. Because the conditions were so harsh, eventually, slowly, they developed a natural resistance to heat. Migrating to this new area requires that we eventually become more accustomed to surviving it. This starts with a few within the tribe showing signs of these new mutations. Eventually, more obtain them, and the previous, inferior breed die out. This leaves only those with the abilities required to survive. Over time, the cycle begins again, and this group continues to prosper in strength through the gained mutations. Migration as a mutation is not exclusive only to my ancestors. Examples can be seen all over the world. Take the tailed frog, for example. Tailed frogs are primarily found in North America and Canada, usually in forest areas with streams. Yet over time, a different species of tailed frog began to separate themselves from the group. As these frogs went further into the Rocky Mountains area, they gained extra webbing between their toes to swim faster in the harsher upstream environment. Today they are now classified as an entirely different subspecies, the Rocky Mountain tailed frogs. So as you can see, these mutations are very real and very important for the survival of a species.
As you can see, Danny has used his heat-resistant abilities for the good, and to educate the world on how migration interacts with mutation. Watch as he uses his abilities to protect the innocent. But migration via chosen means is not the only form. There is a second form of mutation through migration, and this form will be discussed with the aid of another one of my students, Alexander Bensick. But again, to the general populace he goes by another alias. This is Alex Bensick, otherwise known to the world as Picnic Man. This former student is an example of forced geographical separation. It is another level of migration mutation.
My people weren't always this way. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, my ancestors weren't too different from any other people. The generations before me were forced away from our original locations, forced to live in heavy forests due to rival tribes. The area was not meant for our survival, and it was very difficult. Yet over hundreds of thousands of years of isolation, we began to develop skills to survive in our harsh environments. These abilities include gliding from treetops to catch prey and escape, increased hand strength for gripping local objects to catch prey at far range, and uncanny quiet feet to escape notice. As you can see, I've adopted a more modern look. I am a role model for public park restoration, as well as teaching children the importance of mutation. For example, I'm far from the only example of my mutation. Take polar bears, for instance. Originally, polar bears did not exist at all. Around 200,000 years ago, a group of native brown bears are believed to have traveled a bit north and become isolated from the rest of the brown bear populace due to a period of glaciation. This period forced these brown bears to survive in the harsher, cold environment. Somewhere between 10 and 20,000 years ago, the molar teeth of the now polar bear changed momentously from that of the brown bear. Over time, they changed in several other ways. These include fur color, swimming habits, and diet. Today, the polar bear is now even classified as an entirely different bear. And all of this based on the mutations gained through migrating towards a different area.
Picnic Man is a great example and teacher in forced geographical separation and its effects on mutation through migration. Now that we've been taught on the different forms of migration mutation, we move on to mutation in its most general aspect. To help us in this field, we will meet my last student, Ivan Calera, but once again to the public, he is known as someone else entirely.